Hi, and welcome back to another episode of SEO On-Air. I'm your host, Aaron, and today we have CJ Bachmann, CEO of One SEO. We talk about what life was like before One SEO, what are some of the things she wished she knew early on, and what are some of the trends we should look out for in 2024. I hope you enjoyed this episode. A lot of questions that I've had, I just haven't had the opportunity to kind of ask them.
Yeah.
But we want to talk more about you itself. So I think you had a background in sales a bit. So how did that kind of progress? How did you kind of get into that in the first place?
Yeah. So when I had left college, I knew that I wanted to be, or at that point, I wanted to be in the corporate world. I wanted to climb that ladder. So my goal was to find one of the fastest growing companies within the area that I was in and just fit myself in. So I actually started out as a receptionist. That was the only open role that they had at that time. And I made a joke when I walked in the door. I was like, I'm not going to be in this position for very long. And within 3 months, I was the assistant to the general manager of the division. And that's where I started to learn more about the sales aspect of the company. I moved into managing people fairly quickly within the first year, a particular division that was the cabinet division in this organization. And that's where I had to learn sales. I had to actually go and meet with builders and convince them to use our company for their new construction. And that's also where I learned to pivot as a female, right? I was in a male-dominated industry, and I learned really quickly that they weren't taking me seriously. So I had to make changes. But it led me to where I am today. And the sales aspect was really fun because I also had to deal with that, right? I had to get unique. I had to, invite people out to lunches or dinners to be able to get that invite where my male counterparts could just walk in the door, throw a set of blueprints on the table, and the conversation started. It wasn't as easy. So I had to get unique in my approach to getting them to listen to me. And ultimately, it led me into my sales career, which I then took to a heating and air conditioning company. And I did sales and marketing for them for about 7 years, which then led me to where I am today, and being able to help our sales department with that background, particularly in the home service arena, since I have experience that really kind of fits that mold. I understand things both from the client side and from our side as marketers.
In the 2 decades of experience, what are some things that you learned that could help other people
Yeah,
get to where you
absolutely.
are?
No, I get it, Aaron. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think one of the biggest things is having the ability to take yourself seriously. No matter how you feel about what people that you're working with think about you, you're in your role for a particular reason, and you have to own that. And it's not being egotistical. It's being confident in knowing that you earned your way to where you're at right now. So you need to earn your way to whatever that next step is. So I think that that's a big piece is taking yourself seriously. Not allowing things like imposter syndrome to, hop into your mind, change your mindset, and make you worried that people aren't looking at you as a leader or aren't taking you seriously. The other piece of advice is that to look at an obstacle as just that. It's just an obstacle that needs to be overcome. It's not a barrier. And I think too often that when things get a little bit rough or when someone hits a brick wall, they look at it as if it's insurmountable, and it's not. You might have to change how you approach it. You might have to sit on it for a little bit to think about how you overcome it. But an obstacle is a learning opportunity and a growth opportunity. And I think when people hit those, a lot of people stop, and that ruins your career or your ability to grow. So I think those are the 2 biggest pieces of advice that I can give to anyone in leadership, but even particularly women. There's no barrier. There are just obstacles to be overcome, and each one of those deserves your time and attention to figure out the best way to actually overcome it.
And I think you kind of put some of these tips and tricks in the book, She Handles It. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah,
And
so I
also,
have a blog.
one more
Yeah.
question was that when exactly did you write that book as well?
Yeah, so it's a blog. So it's a website that is full of blogs all about the She Handles It mindset. I started it a couple of years ago, and the mindset is really all about just because we as women can do everything, it doesn't mean that we have to take it all on. So it's all about having the right mental mindset to say, how am I going to delegate and elevate the people around me so that I can be more productive? We look at, especially women, look at productivity as how many things can I get done personally throughout the course of the day. I've suffered from this for my whole life, right? I go home at night and I take a mental calculation of what did I accomplish today. And so the She Handles It mindset is all about realizing not your limitations, but the things that are actually holding you back from being as productive as you want to be. So whether it is, realizing that I can't be the homeroom mom in my child's classroom, I can't do that and successfully run a business. But the reason I'm successfully running a business is because I want my children to be able to have things that I wasn't afforded as a kid. And I want their life to be carved out in a way that's going to make them successful. So it's a trade-off, and I have to be okay with that. I can still participate financially with the school, but I don't have to be that Betty Crocker mom. And for a lot of women, that's a really hard realization to come from, because we feel like there's this stigma that if we're not baking and sending food to the classroom, if we're not making Dr. Seuss lunches, on Dr. Seuss Day, that we're failing as a parent. And that's not the case. My children get to see me coming to work every day. They get to see how hard I work. They get to see what I'm building. And I'm hoping that they're going to take that into their lives and do something great. It doesn't matter how much of an education that you have. You still have to earn your keep, per se. You still have to go through the motions. You still have to look for that job. And then once you have a job, you have to prove yourself. And I think that a lot of the workforce today is suffering from not understanding that. And I think that the more that I can do to help my children understand the importance of good work ethic and being responsible and accountable for themselves, I'm hoping that it feeds into future generations, and that we're able to see that shift again, where people want to come to work and do a great job, where they want to work hard, they want to be successful, and they know that they have to earn it. That's kind of my method behind my parenting. And hopefully I don't have too many parents who are like, oh, that's horrible. But I think you have to work for it. I think you have to earn it. I don't think that life is not easy, and it's not handed to you on a silver platter. And for those people who are lucky enough to be in that realm, that's great. But most of the people in society are not in that realm, and they do have to work hard, and they do have to dream and have visions and have goals and reach for them. And a lot of times we hurt ourselves and we hurt our children by just handing them everything and not teaching them that lesson. So it's a super important lesson for me.
Yeah, and I think you might have learned that lesson in another way as well. I read this on the She Handles It blog as well, that nepotism was part of it, but it wasn't just handed over to you. It was something that you actually had to prepare for a couple of years prior, when Lance had actually spoken to you about it as well. So I think you would know firsthand that it's not really as easy. Even if you do have, let's say, the connections involved, you still have to put in the work every day to kind of get to that point.
Oh,
But
yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say that I think some people kind of take it a bit too much on themselves and bite a bit too much than they can chew. So they kind of get into this burnout stage. So how did you kind of prepare for what you were going to take without really burning yourself out and keeping your mental health in check?
She Handles It is actually, how I did it. There are blogs in there that talk about ways to clear your head, ways to get back to creativity. One of the things that I did throughout the last couple of years in preparation for everything that I'm handling is really figuring out my work-life integration. Now, I didn't use the word balance, because I don't believe that exists. I think that it is a work-life integration. And how can I meld these two to successfully work for me and work for my family and work for my company? So a lot of times what I do is I have to find these moments that I can actually get back and get focused. Things like kayaking and hiking. Those are things that I can do with my family. But one of the benefits of doing those types of things is I'm in nature. Nature is one of the fastest way to clear your mind, to reset, get reinvigorated, and be able to think clearly and focus on something. And that's been a very big beneficial part of my life. Another thing is educating myself. One way to eliminate burnout is to constantly grow and feel like you're growing, and do it in a way that isn't overarching and makes you feel overwhelmed. So for example, my time is limited, right? Everybody's time is limited. It's the one resource we can't ever get more of. No matter what we do, you can't ever get more of it. So you have to be very specific with how you use your time. So educating myself is important to me, but it was also time limiting, because when am I supposed to do that, right? In the morning before I get to work, when I get home in the evening, I'm taking time away from my family, so on and so forth. So I do a lot of reading via Audible and podcast and things like that. I have a 40-minute commute. So now I'm able to use that time to my benefit. So every single morning and every single evening as I leave the office, I don't do anything in my car except for listen to an Audible or listen to a podcast from an education standpoint. Or I make phone calls to clients just to do health checks. How are you feeling? How are things going on? So learning to use that time more wisely, that's been a huge benefit to me.
You know that book, Healthy Habits of a Highly Efficient Person?
Yes.
I feel like they were basing that book off a character like yours itself, where you have to really optimize and make it efficient what you're really doing with your time. Otherwise, well, you can spend that 40-minute commute just staring at the traffic.
Yeah, absolutely. Or, just listening to the radio and kind of tuning out. And sometimes that's what you need. And it's being self-aware to know what you need and when you need it, right? So I know if my mood is down, maybe I had a rough day, I don't want to carry that home with me. So listening to an audiobook or a podcast might not give me what I need as far as uplifting. And those would be the moments where I switch to turning music on, music that I know will resonate and kind of lift me up and allow me to clear my head. And then by the time I get home, whatever happened throughout the course of the day is no longer affecting me. And I'm able to cook dinner or spend time with my family successfully. And then maybe later on that evening, get back to whatever the issue was and talk with people about resolving it. But yeah, it's a huge knowing yourself and what you need and when you need it, I think is one of the biggest things that leaders need to do. And whether they can do that on their own through self-help books or whether they need a coach to kind of talk them through that, I think that's the one piece of highly effective leaders that under effective leaders aren't doing, but highly effective leaders are working on themselves personally just as much as they are working on the business.
I usually reserve this question for like midway or towards the end of the podcast, but I figured I'll throw it in now. Are there, let's say, 3 books or even podcasts that you would recommend people to listen to?
Yeah, absolutely. From a book standpoint, and I think that that's where I'll focus on because I find the most value through them, are some of the older books on business are amazing. Books like Good to Great, right? There's so much that you can learn from Jim Collins and the way that he looks at businesses and the difference between a good company and a great company. Then there's also unique readings like a book called The Goal. And the entire book is a gentleman trying to solve a problem that he has in a plant. And the way that it is, it's like you're listening to a movie. So if he's walking through a warehouse, talking to the plant manager, you can hear the sounds of the warehouse and it just draws you in. But at the end of the day, it teaches you problem solving and a different way to look at it. And then I look at some of the self-help books like Brene Brown, Mel Robbins, Rachel Hollis. Those are always great reads to work on yourself personally. And they really helped me when I was building my She Handles It mindset to really understand and get comfortable with how I was feeling when I was able to find other people, especially other females, who were finding the same things and learning on the same path that I was on.
I'll try to add a few links to the transcript of this podcast so that we can also, promote those as well.
Yep.
I kind of realized we haven't really spoken about it, but One SEO, how did that story actually happen out with you itself? How did you kind of get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So you already kind of alluded to the nepotism aspect, but my brother-in-law at the time had ended his relationship with yellowpages.com and wanted to start a marketing company that was catered to the SMB. He had seen a lot of companies really kind of almost get ripped off with the new form of advertising that had just, started back in the day. And he wanted to provide a service that was really hands-on with the SMB and was really able to help them succeed, not just a set it and let it go, give us your budget, pay us until, it's not working for you, but really catering to them, building strategies with them. So I was working for that heating air conditioning company at the time, and I kept getting pulled in by my brother-in-law to help with consulting. We did some light email marketing campaigns, created some collateral, and then I found myself just jumping in on conversations. And although I didn't have a background in digital marketing at the time, I was really starting to learn it just being involved and being in that realm. So about 2 years into One SEO is when I joined the company. And like you mentioned, I started from the ground up. I started as a project manager. At one point in time, I was handling upwards of 98 accounts, all on my own, meeting with those clients, reviewing their metrics and things like that. And then just throughout the course of my life, I just continuously moved into one role after another role, which ultimately led me to, in September of 2021, taking on the role as CEO.
And I mean, I feel a lot of people kind of get the broader aspect of what a CEO does, but what does a day in the life of CJ look like?
Yeah, so honestly, it's really truly, it's all about the success of the organization, both from the revenue side and the people side. So a lot of my focus is working with our sales team on what our pipeline looks like, generating new partnerships, making new relationships with potential vendors. I vet a lot of partnerships and a lot of vendors. I meet with the marketing team to make sure that what we're doing from a marketing standpoint is garnering results. I also have one-on-ones with my executive team to make sure that everything is moving in the right direction and that I know where I need to put my time, effort, and attention. I also deal a lot with culture, right? It's, our culture here needs to be from the top down. So my employees need to see me communicating with clients. They need to see me on the floor. So I spend a lot of time meeting with those individuals and understanding kind of what the day-to-day looks like, and then focusing on problems. Obviously, that's where a CEO's most attention goes. What's not going well inside the company, and then working on that until it's solved.
We can probably divide this into two sections of it, but the culture part of it is what I wanted to kind of just maybe briefly talk about. There is one part of the culture where it's kind of the way you want to carry yourself in the company and how you expect other employees and team members to also present themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But the culture that I was thinking of more of was, how do you kind of help employees let them burn off their steam? Is
Yeah.
there, let's say, activities where you can get everyone together to just learn some team building stuff as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I joke a lot about our culture here because the essence of our culture is customer success, right? So it's all about the customer experience. But like you mentioned, culture is also more about the happiness of the employees and how they feel coming into the office every day. So we have that Google-esque kind of office environment. So we have bikes and we have scooters and we have a basketball goal and a pool table. So people are able to take time throughout the day to burn off steam by, playing pool at lunchtime or playing a basketball game. We do a lot of team building things as well. We have a really, really large parking lot. So we're constantly having food trucks out there. And then we have wiffle ball games and all that kind of stuff to really give people the opportunity to come together. Each team I have here also has a quarterly stipend, and that quarterly stipend is for them to use for team building. So whether they're going out to a smash room and they're smashing a car and glasses, or they're going out to a happy hour or going to a ball game, things like that, it's allowing them to build that rapport with one another. We want them to be connected. We want them to rely on one another. You're more apt to step in and help when everybody is connected and everybody's working towards that common goal. So I think just feeding that into our culture and letting people know that we are only as good as our weakest link. So it's our duty to make sure that we pull that weakest link up so that we can all operate as close to excellence as possible.
I think a lot of time people struggle, or not people, but at least people in those positions who choose not to do these kind of see their employees as just numbers, or the profit adding up. But when you have that empath type leader who actually kind of understands that if you have, let's say, a healthy employee, you're going to have that healthy profit at some point later on. It's a more sustainable kind of environment. So
Absolutely.
what
And
would
it
you
helps with
say?
retention. Yeah. I mean, it is much more, it's much more expensive to hire a new employee than it is to institute a small change that could keep an employee happy and feeling confident inside the company. And that's the way that we take it. And same thing on the sales side. It's much more expensive to get a new client than it is to retain an existing one. So it's finding
Right.
those balances and being able to, work towards a common goal. And that means that you have to be empathetic. If you want them to follow you, you have to understand any limitations that they may have.
So apart from empathy, what would you say are some qualities every leader should have,
I think
or it
that
would be
leaders,
good to have?
aside from being empathetic and being able to understand your employees, you need to be a great communicator. But even more importantly, being a great communicator, you need to be an active listener. You need to be able to actually take the time, slow down, hear what someone is trying to share with you. Because I think a lot of times we're moving so fast. Once you hit a leadership position, you're not willing or able to sit and accept advice that could potentially be life changing. So I think that being an empath, understanding what your employees need and want, being that good communicator and an active listener are all major traits that have to be there. That's what takes, and I mentioned good to great, but that's the difference between a level 4 leader and a level 5 leader, right? We all want to reach that level 5 status. And that's where that humility comes in. And if I think I'm the only one with answers, if I think I'm the only one with ideas, I'm going to be alone the rest of my life, in this position. I want to bring people up with me, right? There's something next for me. And in order for me to do that, in order for me to focus on that, I need to bring the people up around me.
And could you maybe give us like I don't think it would be easy to kind of give a step-by-step procedure to do that. But what would be some easy steps to kind of follow so that other people could probably do that then?
Yeah, I think that the first thing is making sure as a CEO or a leader of your organization, you're going to slowly lose pulse of everything that's happening with your employee base. So things that you can do to keep yourself in the know are critical. And I like to do one-on-ones with every employee at least once a year. I do one-on-ones with my leadership team, my direct reports on a weekly basis, but I want to make sure that I have my finger on a pulse. So I recently did an exercise where we're getting ready to do our 2024 budget planning. So I took randomly 8 employees from different departments, different divisions inside the company, and I did quick one-on-ones with them. And I asked them, I said, hey, if let's say, pretend like I handed you the keys to the kingdom and you walk in the door tomorrow and you're the CEO, what's your focus? What's your attention? What problems would you solve? What would you stop, continue doing, repeat, do more of, to get their insight? It does 2 things. One, they may have an amazing idea that they've never shared before, and now I'm giving them the window to share that. But 2, I'm also spending that one-on-one time with them, so now we're connected. When I walk out on the floor and say, hey guys, we have this massive project that needs to get done within 5 days, more people are going to be inclined to jump in and want to help because they're connected to me. They understand, they know I care about them as individuals. So step 1 is really being able to get a pulse of what's happening. And then step 2 would be to develop a way that you can understand what's happening in the entire company on a weekly basis. We do that through using L10 meetings, which is the EOS traction mentality. But that gives us at a high level, I know which part of my company needs my attention because I'm going through and I'm looking at a scorecard that gives me those metrics. So if I know that there's an issue on culture because retention isn't where it needs to be, I need to put time, effort, and energy there. If sales isn't where it needs to be, time, effort, and energy. It's a roadmap that tells you where you need to be. I think those 2 things are the starting point. Having a great meeting that allows you to see the health of your company in one quick shot, and then connecting with your employees on a regular basis to know how they're feeling and what's going on. That's going to help you be more of a visionary than what you would think.
During your time at One SEO and the years before that, did you ever feel that you had a mentor that you could look up to? And how important is that to have in this kind of industry?
Yeah, so throughout my life, there's been different types of mentors, right? I always come back to my dad as one of the number one people that's influenced things like my work ethic, my drive, my passion, my motivation. And that all really stems back from what, when I was a child, felt like torture, right? all these roles and responsibilities and task lists that all belong to me. Like as a kid, it felt like torture. So I always go back to my dad as one of the biggest influences, in my life. And then I look at individuals. So, when I moved into One SEO, I never had any intentions of being CEO. It wasn't a thought. I just wanted to build a career. But Lance Bachman, who was the previous owner of One SEO, became a mentor, right? He shared what made him successful, the good, the bad, the ugly. He constantly pushed me. And as many times as we butted heads and combated one another, it was a beneficial relationship because he was growing and I was growing. So I will always be grateful to what he has done for me and how he has helped me grow along the way. Then I look at other individuals in my life, friends, colleagues, people who have taken the path that I'm on before me and really just connecting with them. I am a part of a group called Pavilion, and I've taken advantage of finding mentors through that, people that I can talk with and just bounce ideas off of. And then I also hired a CEO coach, someone that's going to help me continue to work on myself as a person and myself as a CEO. I believe, again, like I said, I'm a firm believer in growth, and I think it is so important that we continue to work on ourselves. And I couldn't say that if I wasn't willing to do it on my own. And I am very much about self-awareness and growing and learning and becoming a better version of myself every single day.
And I think that kind of screams out that you embody lead by example, because you don't want to put someone that you haven't really gone through it yourself. Like you don't really want that for someone.
Yeah, and that's a huge piece that I think a lot of leaders miss out on too, is there are some people that come into a company never having worked into that company from a leadership standpoint. And that's a little bit hard. But in my example, everybody in this building knows that I was a project manager. So when I'm sitting and I'm talking about how a client should feel, how a meeting should go with a client, so on and so forth, they know that I've been there before. They understand that I'm coming from a place of, having gone down that path and been in the trenches. So it's a lot more easy to lead by example when I'm able to showcase what made me successful in that role, what helped me. And that's how I use that, being able to help people be organized by telling them how I managed to handle 98 clients all by myself, which is not ideal, right? So being able to tell them how I was able to do that now helps them 10 times fold when they're only handling 40 accounts. So it's a very beneficial way of being a leader when you're able to truly relate to the roles and responsibilities that your employees have.
I do have like two other major questions to ask. I'll try to make them a bit quick.
That's fine.
One is basically this year, 2023, we've had a lot of changes, and one of the biggest ones was AI in general, tools and automation also. What are your thoughts on the whole endeavor, and where do you think it'll kind of go in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give a quote that I've been sharing, and that quote is that AI is not your competition. Your competition using AI is, right? So AI is not the threat.
Do you
Those
mind if I
using
steal
it,
that one?
yes, please do. AI is not the threat. Your competition using it, they are. But no, AI has leveled the playing field. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that there was already so much AI in our daily lives, right? From Siri and Alexa to the Bluetooth that we use in our phone, asking questions and finding information. I know myself personally, I don't walk out the door without asking Alexa what the weather is going to be, so that that I'm prepared. It's already infiltrated so many pieces of our life. So I think that it's only going to continue to enhance our productivity as an agency, because we're able to work a lot smarter instead of working a lot harder. And I think that if people can start to adopt it with that mindset and think this will make me better as a person, better as a professional, and not this is going to take over my job. So for us as a company, one of the first places that we started to use AI was on the content creation side. And one of the biggest reasons is it's completely inefficient to hire somebody for every industry to write content, right? A group of legal people writing content, a group of home services writing content, medical writing content. So we're able to produce a lot more utilizing tools that were built around AI. So for example, and I'll just throw it out there, Jasper on top of Surfer provides excellent optimized content for SEO. Now my content writers instead are able to be editors. They're able to go through and make sure that everything is good and it reflects the voice, the tone, the services that the business offers. And their time is now spent on how that content performs. Whereas before AI, I have to produce 4 to 5 pieces of content today. I have to get them edited. Then I got to move on to the next 4 or 5 pieces that I have to have. Now they can do 25 pieces of content in that same time frame and spend their time on what did this content do for the bottom line for this company? Did it produce anything? Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? So I think if everybody can adopt the understanding of, hey, let's see how it can help us be better, then the fear will go away and everybody will be working a lot more efficiently. And like I mentioned before, it leveled the playing field, right? So you in India, you're using the exact same tools, the exact same artificial intelligence that we're using here in the United States. That means that I can reach out to you for help with something and you're able to facilitate it in the same way that I would. That didn't exist beforehand, right? Now it does. It levels the playing field and it allows us all to be more efficient and more effective, giving time for communication and performance and firefighting and all those things that bog down our day. Now they can be our focuses, and the ancillary stuff, we can let the bots do it.
Yeah, it kind of did a lot of the heavy lifting for us so that we can focus on the more important areas. But while that was one trend for this year, do you feel like there are going to be so few trends in the next year that we should probably get ahead of now?
Yeah, I think the biggest trends that you're going to see are a lot of productization. And I'm coming from now, and you have to understand the biggest book of our business here at One SEO is home services. So we get a lot of trends and a lot of understanding in that particular realm just because we're so deep inside of it. And I think one of the biggest trends that we are seeing right now is the VC and PE firms that are buying and bundling up these home service companies. And what that means is that these home service companies that were small SMBs are now acting like corporations, right? They now have this PE-backed infrastructure. So their expectation for their vendors and their partners are completely different. So, a year ago when we're talking to a small to medium-sized business owner, we're talking to the owner himself. He's reviewing his budget with us. He's reviewing his performance. Now, every shop, no matter the size, has its own marketing person. So now our conversations are drastically different. We're dealing with their inside marketing person that was placed by the PE firm. So again, it's that roll up of these small companies, and that's changing how we look at it. The roofing industry, they're the next ones. And then I believe pest control is going to be one of the next one that comes in. You're going to see these massive roll-ups. So SMBs are going to start to dwindle off as they're making their exits and they're being rolled up into these large conglomerates. So now as an agency, we have to decide, do we want to stay boutique and we want to handle these small one-off startup companies? Or do we want to be more at the enterprise level where we're working with these private equity-backed conglomerates to help them be successful? I think that's the biggest trend, is the expectation that's going to be put on us as marketers to be able to educate companies, not just provide results.
I feel like you've got a long road ahead of you for that, kind of leading the way as well. Do I have a little bit more time with you as well? I think I just have pretty much one other question to kind of give.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. It's pretty much not really a question as well. It's more of like a plug. If you had 1 minute to pretty much plug whatever you needed to plug, this would be your time for it, technically.
Yeah, absolutely. So at One SEO, we are a full service digital marketing agency. And I have one goal, and that's to provide marketing services that work. I want your marketing to work. We're not about bells and whistles. We're not about fancy dashboards and all of this stuff. We are about simply providing marketing services that work to help your business grow. I think that's the biggest plug that I can give. And that's who we are as an individual. A lot of our competitors like to be fancy, and we appreciate it. But our focus is truly on results. And that's our goal for ourselves as a company, and that's our goal for our clients.
Thank you again for the chat. It's been really great. I felt really comfortable talking to you. I think that's pretty much why the time kind of went by so quickly. But thank you so much for that. It's been really great. I hope people listen to this and learn a lot.
Absolutely, Aaron. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for watching that episode. I hope you enjoyed. For more videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe.